The Nephilim, pre-flood giants. Did you know that the Bible mentions the existence of a race of giants that walked the earth before Noah's great flood? These beings are called Nephilim, and they have intrigued scholars and the curious for centuries. Who were these mysterious giants? Were they supernatural creatures, the result of a union between fallen angels and human women? Or was there something more? In the Bible, the Nephilim are first mentioned in Genesis 6:4, where it is said that, "In those days there were giants on the earth." This excerpt is enigmatic and raises several questions. The word Nephilim is usually translated as giants, but its literal meaning can also be the fallen ones. Some scholars believe this refers to the fall of the angels who joined the daughters of men, generating this powerful and frightening race. These creatures apparently had incredible strength and stature, and their violent and corrupt behavior is cited as one of the reasons why God decided to send the flood to purify the earth. The Nephilim are often interpreted as tragic and powerful figures, and there are numerous theories about their origin. The hypothesis that they were descendants of fallen angels is based on a particular reading of the biblical text, and others believe that the Nephilim may have simply been a race of exceptionally large humans. But regardless of their origin, the impact of these giants on biblical history is profound. Noah's own flood, one of the best-known stories in the Bible, was in part a response to the corrupting presence of these giants. Furthermore, apocryphal books such as Enoch offer more details about the Nephilim, describing them as voracious beings who consumed everything around them. When the food ran out, they would have even turned to humanity, spreading even more violence and destruction. This suggests that the Nephilim not only existed, but were a significant threat to humanity's survival. An interesting curiosity is that the fascination with the Nephilim is not limited to the biblical text. They appear in diverse mythologies and cultures around the world, leading some to speculate that the idea of giants may be a reflection of an ancient reality, or at least a powerful metaphor to represent the dangers and challenges of that time. But what happened to the Nephilim after the flood? The Bible is not very clear about this, but there is evidence that remnants of this race continued to exist in later eras. This leads us directly to our next subject, the giants who emerged after the flood, including iconic figures like Goliath and the mysterious Anassini. Goliath, the giant defeated by David. When we talk about giants in the Bible, probably the first figure that comes to mind is Goliath. He is the protagonist of one of the most iconic stories in Scripture, in which the young shepherd David, still unknown, faces and defeats the giant Philistine warrior in a singular combat. But who was Goliath, and why was his defeat so significant? Goliath is described as a colossal warrior, with a height that, according to the biblical account, varied between 3 and almost 4 meters tall, depending on the translation. To put that into perspective, he would be taller than any human being recorded in modern history. Furthermore, their armor and weaponry were also of immense proportions, highlighting their physical strength and destructive capabilities on the battlefield. The story of David and Goliath, told in 1 Samuel 17, is not only a narrative of courage and faith, but also a metaphor for the struggle between good and evil, or between faith in God and fear in the face of gigantic obstacles. Goliath, the champion of the Philistines, challenged the army of Israel for 40 days, hoping that some warrior would have the courage to face him in hand-to-hand combat. No Israelite soldier dared accept the challenge until David, armed only with a sling and 5 stones, appeared on the battlefield. David's victory is often seen as a sign of divine intervention, showing that physical strength is not enough to defeat the true power of faith. But who was Goliath anyway? There are several theories about its origin. Some believe he was part of a tribe of giants descended from the Nephilim, while others point out that he may have been a member of the so-called Rephaim, another mysterious race of giants mentioned in the Bible. The fact is that Goliath was not just an isolated aberration, but part of a lineage of giants that apparently still existed at the time. Furthermore, Goliath's defeat had significant political and spiritual implications. It not only marked the rise of David, who would later become king of Israel, but it also signaled the superiority of God's people over their enemies, regardless of apparent disadvantages. The victory over the Philistine giant became a symbol that, with faith, even the most impossible challenges can be overcome. Interestingly, the story of Goliath also resonates in other cultures, where reports of heroes facing mighty giants are common. This suggests that the figure of the giant may be an ancient and universal metaphor for the obstacles humanity faces. However, in the specific case of Goliath, his existence appears to have a more literal basis, given his inclusion in the biblical record. The Anakims, giants of the Promised Land. Now let's travel a little further in biblical history to the moment when the Israelites approached the Promised Land after the Exodus from Egypt. When Moses sent 12 spies to explore the land of Canaan, they returned with news that terrified the people. The land was inhabited by giants known as Anasini. These beings were so imposing that the spies felt like grasshoppers in front of them. The Anasini were a tribe of giants who lived in the mountainous region of Canaan. According to the spies' account in Numbers 13:33, they were descendants of the Nephilim, which indicates a possible connection to the pre-flood giants. This suggests that, even after the flood, some lineages of these beings survived or reappeared in some form. The presence of these giants was a great obstacle for the Israelites, who were about to conquer the land promised to them by God. Accounts of the Anasin indicate that they were a feared race, with formidable combat abilities and an impressive stature. The fear they caused among the Israelites was so great that even with the divine promise of victory, many hesitated to advance. Only Joshua and Caleb, two of the spies, trusted God and believed that the giants could be defeated. The eventual defeat of the Anasini in the battles fought by Joshua is seen as yet another example of divine power working in favor of Israel. These giants, who seemed invincible to human eyes, were no match for God's will. However, their memory continued to haunt the people of Israel, and their remnants still appear at other points in the biblical narrative. Interestingly, giants appear in many other ancient cultures, from the Titans of Greek mythology to the giants of Norse mythology. These legends may indicate a shared memory of an era when enormous, powerful beings were an important part of the world's mythological and perhaps even physical landscape. But returning to the Promised Land, the Anasins were just one of the many tribes of giants that inhabited the region. Another equally mysterious and imposing tribe was the Rephaim, giants who crossed the path of the people of Israel on several occasions. The Rephaim, shadows of giants of the past. The Rephaim are mentioned several times in the Old Testament, always as a tribe of giants who caused terror in the nations around them. But who were they, and why were they considered so powerful? The name Rephaim is often translated as the dead or the dark ones, which leads some scholars to believe that, in addition to being giants, they had an association with the world of the dead or with some type of spiritual force. These giants first appear in Genesis, but are also mentioned in Deuteronomy, Joshua, and other historical books of the Old Testament. They inhabited the regions east of the Jordan River, an area that would later be known as the land of Bashan. The Rephaim, in addition to their imposing presence east of the Jordan, are described as one of the oldest races of giants in the Bible. They are often mentioned alongside other feared peoples such as the Zuzites and Emim, and seem to dominate the region with their impressive strength and stature. The word Rephaim has generated debate among scholars. Some believe that their translation as the dead or the dark ones indicates a spiritual connection, perhaps suggesting that they were venerated or feared as supernatural figures. This raises intriguing questions. Did these giants have any kind of relationship with the underworld or with spiritual forces? The presence of the Rephaim is particularly notable during the period of the conquest of the Promised Land. Deuteronomy 2:20-21, for example, tells us that the Rephaim were formerly known as a great and numerous people, as tall as the Anasini. However, they were gradually defeated and dispersed by other tribes such as the Moabites and Ammonites. This suggests that although they were giants, their strength was not enough to stop the expansion of other nations. One of the most striking examples of their defeat comes with the story of King Og of Bashan, who was, according to biblical tradition, the last of the Rephaim. Og, king of Bashan. The last of the giants, Og, king of Bashan, is one of the most fascinating and frightening characters in the Bible when it comes to giants. He is mentioned in Deuteronomy 3:11 as the last of the Rephaim, and his physical dimensions are impressively described. His bed, made of iron, measured approximately 4 meters long and 180 meters wide. This suggests that Og was incredibly large, even by the standards of biblical giants. The battle between Israel and Og is narrated in the Book of Numbers, when Moses leads the Israelites in conquering the lands east of the Jordan. Og, knowing the power of Israel and its God, still decides to face Moses and his army. But as with other tribes of giants, God's presence alongside Israel makes all the difference. Og and his people were completely defeated, and their land was taken by the Israelites. The fall of Og marked the end of an era. He was the last great representative of a race of giants that, for generations, terrorized the nations of the region. Og's legacy endures in biblical tradition as one of the greatest physical and spiritual obstacles Israel faced on its journey to the Promised Land. Although his death symbolized the end of the giants in that region, his story continues to intrigue. Why does the Bible choose to emphasize so much the dimensions of its iron bed? This could be a way to highlight his immense stature, but also to symbolize the strength and invincibility he represented until his defeat by Moses. Og is a figure that reminds us that, no matter how big and powerful our challenges are, faith and trust can overcome any obstacle, no matter how gigantic it may be. Furthermore, there is a curious element in Og's story. Many scholars believe that his iron bed may have been more than just a personal item. Some suggest that it could be a sarcophagus frame or even a funerary monument, given the object's extraordinary size. Whatever the exact meaning, the prominence given to Og's bed is a reminder of the impressive and terrifying nature of these giants that inhabited the earth. But what happened to the other giants after Og's death? Have they really disappeared? Or are there traces of this mysterious race in other parts of the world? Even though the Bible doesn't mention it directly, some theories suggest that these giants may have left descendants or influenced mythology from other ancient cultures. After all, reports of giants are not exclusive to the Bible. The presence of giants in the Bible is a fascinating topic that mixes history, mythology, and mystery. From the Nephilim who walked the earth before the flood, to Goliath, the fearsome warrior defeated by David, passing through the Anassini and Rephaim, and culminating with Og, the last of the giants, each of these figures leaves a deep mark on the biblical narrative and in our imagination. But did they really exist? Or were they symbols of something bigger? While modern science tries to explain many of the mysteries of the past, the biblical giants continue to be figures surrounded by speculation. Perhaps they were humans of great stature, belonging to an era that archaeology has not yet completely deciphered. Or perhaps they represent something more symbolic, the challenges that seemed insurmountable, but which, with faith and determination, could be overcome. In any case, the biblical giants continue to fascinate us, not only for their physical proportions but also for the mysteries and deep meanings that their stories carry. Sihon, the Amorite giant. While Og, the king of Bashan, is widely known as a giant, his neighbor Sihon, king of the Amorites, also has a significant presence in the biblical narrative. Although Sihon is not explicitly described as a giant in terms of height or stature, many scholars speculate that he, like Og, could have belonged to a race of giants, or at least been an exceptionally large and powerful man, comparable to the other giants mentioned in Bible. Sihon was the first major adversary of the Israelites after their escape from Egypt. When Moses asked for permission to pass peacefully through Amorite territory, Sihon, confident in his military strength, refused. This resulted in a fierce battle, chronicled in Numbers 21:21-35, in which the Israelites, under the leadership of Moses, defeated Sihon and took his land. Interestingly, the fact that Sihon is mentioned in conjunction with Og, a recognized giant, leads many to speculate about a possible connection between them. After all, the Amorites are often described in the Bible as being of great stature. In Amos 2:9, God says, "I destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like cedars and strong as oaks." This suggests that the Amorites, like Sihon, were known for their extraordinary size and strength, making them fearsome adversaries both physically and militarily. Sion also represents an early example of how giants or powerful figures served as both physical and spiritual obstacles to the Israelites. By defeating him, the Israelites once again demonstrated that, with divine help, they could overcome even the most formidable enemies. His defeat, like Og's, was a prelude to the conquest of the Promised Land. The connection between the Amorites and giants appears not only in the Bible, but also in other ancient sources, including Mesopotamian inscriptions and accounts that describe tall and powerful people. This suggests that the idea of giants, or at least impressive warriors, was common throughout the region, and that Sihon could have been one of these legendary figures. The Zuzites, mysterious giants of antiquity. The Zuzites are a tribe of giants mentioned cryptically in the Bible, specifically in Genesis 14:5. They are listed as one of the people who were defeated by Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, during a military campaign. But who were these Zuzitas, and why are they so mysterious? Although details about the Zuzites are scarce, the fact that they are mentioned alongside other giant tribes such as the Rephaim and Emim suggests that they were equally fearsome and possibly giants in stature. His name, Zuzitas, is often associated with terms meaning tall people or powerful. This may indicate that, like the Rephaim, the Zuzites were known for their impressive stature and physical strength. The defeat of the Zuzites by Chedorlaomer is significant because it shows that, even in an era before the arrival of the Israelites in the Promised Land, the lands of Canaan and the surrounding area were inhabited by tribes of giants. These tribes apparently were constantly involved in conflicts, being both conquerors and conquered, which shows that despite their stature and strength, they were not invincible. The Zuzites, like the Rephaim, were gradually eliminated or absorbed into other tribes over time. Although the Bible doesn't offer many details about them, their inclusion in the sacred text suggests they were an important part of the region's ancient landscape, and their legacy as giants lives on in the few mentions we receive. Furthermore, like other giant tribes mentioned in the Bible, the Zuzites may have played a symbolic role, representing the opposing forces that the Israelites and other peoples needed to overcome on their journey to fulfill their divine destinies. The battle against these giants, whether Zuzites or others, always carries a strong spiritual and moral significance. The Emim, scary giants of Moab. Another group of giants mentioned in the Bible are the Emim, a tribe described in Deuteronomy 2:10-11 as a people great and numerous, as tall as the Anakim. They inhabited the region of Moab, east of the Jordan, and their name, Emim, means the fearsome or the terrifying ones. This indicates that in addition to their large stature, they were known to cause fear and terror in their adversaries. The Emim were one of several tribes of giants who, according to the Bible, inhabited the Promised Land before the arrival of the Israelites. Like the Anakim and Rephaim, they were a fearsome obstacle to people seeking to dominate these regions. However, the Moabites, descendants of Lot, eventually managed to expel the Emim and take possession of their lands. The story of the Emim is interesting because it suggests that not only the Israelites but also other neighboring nations had to deal with the presence of giants. This reinforces the idea that these creatures were seen as a significant and perhaps supernatural force in the region. The presence of giants in various parts of ancient Canaan may have served as a symbol of the seemingly insurmountable barriers that the people of the time faced on their journeys of conquest and settlement. The Emim are a clear example of how giants were not only physical obstacles, but also spiritual and emotional ones. The fear they inspired was as much a psychological as a military barrier, and this is reflected in the way they are described in the Bible. At the same time, their eventual defeat by the Moabites shows that with persistence and courage, even the most fearsome giants can be overcome. The Emim are also directly compared to the Anakim, which suggests that they were as impressive a tribe as the giants of Canaan. However, like many of the other giant tribes, they disappeared from history, defeated by more determined nations or divine power. The Avitas, giants of Gaza and their remnants. The Avites are another tribe mentioned in passing in the Bible, but their connection to the giants is intriguing. In Deuteronomy 2:23, We read that the Avites, who inhabited the region of Gaza, were defeated by the Caphtorites, who would later be known as the Philistines. Although the Bible does not explicitly mention that the Avites were giants, Jewish tradition and some interpretations suggest that they were of great stature. The region of Gaza, where the Avites lived, is significant because it would later become Philistine territory, home to Goliath and other giant warriors. This raises the question of whether the Avites could have been ancestral to or related to the Philistine giants. Philistine culture seems to have inherited this tradition from giant warriors, such as Goliath, who stood out as one of the most famous of his time. Although details about the Avites are scarce, the fact that they were replaced by the Philistines, who became known for their giant warriors, is an intriguing connection. The history of ancient Gaza and its inhabitants suggests that the region has always been inhabited by people of great stature and strength, who played an important role in the battles and power dynamics of ancient Canaan. Furthermore, the connection between the Avites and the Philistines can be seen as part of a larger narrative about the persistence of giants in the Bible. Even though tribes like the Avites disappeared, their successors continued to pose the same kind of threat to the Israelites, as was clear in the confrontation between David and Goliath. The Gibborim, heroes or mighty giants. Finally, let's talk about the Gibborim, a Hebrew word that can be translated as heroes, mighty warriors, or in some cases, even giants. Although the Gibborim are not always described as giants in the physical sense, there are some passages in the Bible that associate them with beings of great stature and strength. An interesting example is Genesis 6:4, where it says that there were giants on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God came together with the daughters of men, and sons were born to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. Some scholars believe that the Gibborim were a special class of warriors, possibly related to the Nephilim. They are described as brave or mighty, which suggests that even if they were not giants in the literal sense, they were men of exceptional strength, capable of great feats. The idea that the Gibborim could be giants or descended from giants is linked to Nephilim lore, and the idea that these extraordinary beings continued to exist in some form after the flood. The Gibborim also appear elsewhere in the Bible, including the story of Nimrod, described as a mighty hunter before the Lord in Genesis 10:8-9. Nimrod is a figure shrouded in mystery, and some believe he may have been one of the last of the Nephilim or a Gibborim, due to his strength and fame. Be that as it may, the Gibborim represent a class of warriors who, in some cases, may have been giants, or at least possessed superhuman characteristics. Gibborim are a reminder that in the Bible, physical strength and courage are often associated with divine or supernatural power. They stand out as figures who, although human, transcended their physical limitations, becoming legendary heroes whose stories continue to inspire. The biblical giants, whether they are Nephilim, Rephaim, Anakim, or any of the tribes mentioned, are figures that continue to fascinate scholars, religious people, and the curious to this day. These figures, often described as insurmountable obstacles, represent not only physical challenges, but also spiritual and moral ones. Whether facing Sihon, Og, Goliath, or any of the other giants mentioned, the Israelites and their heroes often demonstrated that, with faith and courage, even the greatest challenges can be overcome. And once again, if you're enjoying these fun facts, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating content about the Bible, ancient history, and other mysteries of the ancient world. Leave in the comments which of these giants you found most intriguing, and see you next time.